So I'm going to obviously talk about the challenges of bringing hardware to market, but take a little bit different perspective than Oscar, and I'll use the Nymi story. And so I think anybody who has done the startup thing, especially in hardware, knows that it's this wonderful experience where it punches you in the face every day, and you can go and then look at those bruises and say, well, what did I learn? And so I want to share those bruises with you, but through the Nymi story. So the easiest way for you to first start to understand what it is that we would do, I'll just show you our video. Can we get it going? So that's the Nymi band, and it's essentially a wearable authenticator. So it's the thing that we're often known for is that we have unique biometric based on the cardiac rhythm. So we use the electrocardiogram signal as a signature, like your fingerprint, to authenticate identity. And so a lot of people know us as the heartbeat authentication company, but really what this is from a use case perspective is persistent authentication or continuous authentication, where as long as you're wearing this, you don't have to prove who you are over and over again throughout the day. So you're not having to enter a password or a PIN. This wristband knows who you are and then works on your behalf, communicates over BLE as well as NFC. So the NFC, as you imagine, creates that sort of tap experience where you can access things. BLE is more passive, where you can sit in front of your computer, will unlock, and you walk away, it will relock. And so that's the concept. And I'll start by just telling you the path that we've taken. So this is sort of a rundown of the company history. So we used to be called BioNym. We started 2011, so over 5 years ago, and started off with just the biometric technology. And so I have a PhD in electrical and computer engineering. We took this technology out of the lab at the University of Toronto, and the goal was to commercialize this technology. We didn't have a product concept, we just had this key piece of biometric technology. And so 2 years of essentially exploring different application opportunities and then realizing with such a new technology, we really need to come up with an embodiment of the technology that actually makes sense in the world. And so it wasn't until 2013 when we came up with the concept of the Nymi band. So the company already existed and was working on the technology for 2 years before we came up with saying, hey, if we take this biometric and we make it persistent on the body, that actually brings a lot of value to the market. And so our original concept, and this is a key thing, is we thought consumers, this made a lot of sense in the consumer space. We wanted to tap into the excitement around crowdfunding and just a new wearable tech in the consumer space. And we thought, we could create a lot of excitement as sort of something that consumers would wear in the future. Could be embedded in smartwatches or fitness bands, but today they wear it, will do payments, will unlock their devices, unlock their home security and all sorts of things like that. And so we raised a seed round on this concept and the core technology that we had in July 2013. So almost $1.5 million. You think, well, that's a fair bit of money. How far can you get on money like that? So we pre-launched the product as a consumer product in September 2013. And we made a key strategic decision is we actually didn't use crowdfunding. We didn't use Indiegogo or Kickstarter. We decided to do essentially pre-orders where people had to put down a credit card. So we're validating, it's a pretty strong validation that they're willing to buy it, but we didn't charge the credit card. We didn't want their money because we knew that even if the funding campaign was pretty successful, we probably wouldn't raise enough money from those pre-orders to fully fund the business. And the problem if you're doing a Kickstarter or Indiegogo, you walk away with the money, you now have a major, major commitment to what you launched with, right? Whatever your video showed, whatever is the concept you put out there. And remember, what is a crowdfunding campaign or a pre-order campaign? It's validating a concept. You haven't put anything in people's hands. And so we decided, okay, we don't want to actually take people's money because it's likely not going to be enough to fully fund the business. And so we had a very successful pre-launch, did about $1 million in pre-orders, but not taking that money. And we told people, well, we'll charge you when we ship the product. And so in around, I show May and September 2014 at the top there, we raised our Series A, it was $14 million. We thought we would have launched a product by then. We were not close. We've been working on it for a while, and we thought maybe we'll just squeeze it out based on our seed round, not even close. So luckily we did have the successful pre-order campaign, and we were able to raise our Series A, fully fund the business. You're like, that's great. Now we have the resources we need to deliver this product. So we had said early 2014, so we're like, man, we've got to get it out in at least the calendar year 2014. So at least we're not saying it's a year late. And so we did ship in 2014, December 2014, but it was right around this time we realized we had a problem, which was part of our pre-order campaign or pre-launch was intended to help us focus, which was there's so many different use cases that the Nymi band would work for in the consumer space. Are we focused around home security, IoT stuff? Are we focused around payments? Or what is it that ultimately should be the core killer application use cases that we should focus on delivering? And the response we got was essentially zero focus from the market. They loved it. They loved the concept. They got excited. They were willing to put their money down to pre-order it, but trying to draw insights that says, well, here's the 1, 2, or 3 killer applications that we feel confident we can go to market with and be successful in the first generation product. The insight just wasn't there. It was all over the place. Essentially, the response was, people love it if it did everything. If it did everything we showed. And I didn't show you our original consumer video. That's our more recent, more enterprise-focused video. And so we had a problem. We're like, well, we could ship, we could do it, and we'll charge them. They made that commitment. They will pay. But we got really worried. We say, we've got money in the bank now. Do we want to go and spend and try and push a product to market and get into Best Buy, all these things, without that focus of exactly what's going to justify people to wear it day in, day out? So we made a pretty quick but huge decision, which was we shipped it in December 2014, but we decided to call it the Discovery Kit or Developer Kit. And then in January, we announced publicly that we were pivoting the company to be enterprise focused. So we were essentially looking at the space of interest for the product, and we thought, like, we're able to generate a lot of excitement to get people to pre-order, but we had to think ahead as like, what's going to justify somebody wearing this day in, day out? We found that it's actually a much bigger ask in the wearable space to say, wear this every day, than it is to ask them to buy it. People will buy it, and then they'll put it in a drawer. And we just didn't want to go down that route where we're running on a treadmill. It's like, okay, we could get our first sales, but then what next, what next? And so we're like, well, what are the areas where they would buy it for a specific focus use case, and we could sort of deliver that experience beginning to end that hit that, and so they will wear it. And so we decided that it's really essentially all the non-consumer spaces. Companies that would be buying this for enterprise or industrial use cases. Healthcare is another interesting one, doctors and nurses. And it's like, well, they're buying it, and then they're going to essentially be forcing their employees to wear it because it serves a very specific need. And so we pivoted the company enterprise focus in January 2015, and we used the initial product as a pilot product. We could deliver into these use cases, but not sort of fully in the market. We're doing them as pilots. And so we had some of our original pre-order customers coming to us and saying, first of all, a lot of them thought they had paid, and they're like, what's going on? Where is it? I thought you were shipping. And we're like, sorry, we've changed our plans. We also didn't charge you, so you really have nothing to complain about. So sometimes we have to remind them that. And I'm so glad that we made that decision. It turned out to be vitally important. And so 2015 and now early in 2016 was really about shifting that focus, but building the company around this new enterprise focus. And I mean, we look fundamentally different today than we did 2 years ago. And so now we are going to our full commercial product launch. And it's more than a year later than when we thought we'd be fully in the market, and we're in a different market. But I'm glad, we sort of made those decisions earlier on, rather than waiting until it was like, holy crap, how do we raise the next round when we don't show we have a follow-up? People didn't use the product. It was cool, they bought it, but they put it in a drawer. That's very hard to follow up on and actually show you're going to build a sustainable business. And so, I mean, we have exciting developments where we partner with Microsoft Enterprise Focus. They just demoed about 12 hours ago in Taipei. We partner with them on Windows 10, so you can automatically unlock your Windows 10 computer with your Nymi band. Those things take a lot of time. It's a different focus. If we had spread ourselves over across a bunch of different use cases, it's very hard to deliver that. So that's a timeline, but I'm gonna sort of try and summarize up different pieces so you can understand ultimately those sort of punches in the face that were really valuable lessons. So first of all, lesson number one, and I mean, I didn't invent this sort of phrasing. I've heard this before, but so it's better to have 1,000 people that love you than 100,000 people that like you. So it's great to, you can do a crowdfunding campaign. You can get enough people to like you that they'll put their money down, but it doesn't create that initial early adopter market that's going to propel you and sort of help you get to the next generation, show a real sustainable business. And so, another way of saying is like, who is your customer? And, what's your killer application? And so the reason why I put an old PC there is that we realized that in this space of wearable tech, there's actually sort of a well-worn path that's being played over and over again. We've seen this in the PC market, seen it in mobile, which is when the technology coalesces to create these sort of interesting new products that just make it possible, it's actually very hard to try and go immediately consumer. Because first of all, there's high expectations to generally the sort of the stage of the product set, but it's also, they expect it to do a lot of things to justify it in their life. And so, the PC is a great example because when the PC were new, who was buying it? It was companies that were buying it. It wasn't home users that were buying it because home users was waiting for it to have games and different application suites. The very first customers were enterprises when there was no software. The enterprises paid for the software to be created because they said, you know what, we could use this for accounting and we will pay for the accounting software to be made. And then you realize, well, wait a minute, creating a new ecosystem in this new market that is consumer ready takes a really long time for all the different things to fall into place that actually make that viable. And so going back to those 1,000 people that love you, tends to be quite focused often industrial or enterprise type of use cases that will justify, will be those early adopters because they have a very specific need as to why they're buying it. So second lesson is, I mentioned before, crowdfunding or pre-launch, you're not testing a product. Like, it's a great tool, but you're testing a product concept. And that's not the same as putting in people's hands. And this is the case for all sorts of products, but even more so for hardware. There's so much about the experience that is not known until it's done. And so don't get ahead of yourself in thinking, what is that validation that crowdfunding or pre-order campaign actually offers? So, another way of putting this is give yourself room to pivot, because that's not your line in the sand that says, okay, now we know exactly what it is we're doing. Even if you had a very successful crowdfunding campaign, until it's in the market, there's a lot of unanswered questions. And so, are you sure you want to take customers' money before you've actually delivered a product? It's a very attractive concept that these new platforms offer us, but it comes with a lot of baggage there and challenges. So the last lesson, and this is not, there's a million lessons, but I try to limit to 3, is so you hear hardware is hard. A little bit cut off there. Manufacturing a consumer-grade product is just as hard as it ever was. So first of all, I should be clear, just because we're now going to enterprise or industrial use cases, the expectation is still a consumer-grade hardware experience. So we don't relieve ourselves of that baggage. The standards are high. People expect Apple quality. And so these are photos from our initial production runs, and I should point out that the challenges, and I'll talk a little bit about, if you're dealing with a wearable, you're often dealing with things like overmolding, silicon over electronics, and in the first photo you see it's all very, it's not very flat, and it's obviously would be unappealing to ever deliver that type of a band to a consumer. But that's normal as a first run. So you do this, you have a manufacturing partner, you get the first runs out, then what? So manufacturing is an iterative process. It never comes out perfect or even close to final the first time. So it's like if you kind of muddled your way through and you found what you feel is a good manufacturing partner, you just got started, right? You'll get the first runs out and it's gonna have all sorts of problems and you have to iterate on that. And so, and the second photo, so our band actually has a circuit that's in the band that runs through it. And so that overmolding technique is not everywhere. By the way, I should say we did the original ones in China, not because of scale or because it's cheaper. It's because the expertise in overmolding is in China. That's where, you want to do more complicated overmolding, you do it in China because the talent is there. The last photo shows we were X-raying, we had super tight tolerances. It's wearable, it's gotta be small. Everybody wants it smaller than you can possibly make it. And then you assemble it and you've got problems and you don't have the tolerances there, so we had to X-ray and debug. And so all of these issues are normal. These are not kind of we seriously screwed up. It's just you have to know how to deal with it. And so the ultimate lesson here is, do you have the expertise that's been there and done that? It's very hard to learn this stuff on the job. You can hire the most talented new grad in mechanical, industrial design, all this stuff. It's not the same as actually having gone through it. And so we hired at the right time sort of senior expertise that had built millions of electronics devices and knew how to go through that. And on top of that, do you have the runway to make wrong bets? Because you will. You're going to make some mistakes. You're going to make some choices that turn out to be wrong. That's normal again. But do you have the runway to do that? Meaning, do you have the money to do it? Do you have the, does your strategy give you that buffer to do that? So that's the end. There, I pulled out a few of those insights, but if I were to say what's the one most valuable decision you ever made as a hardware-based startup, is that we did not use crowdfunding ultimately as a tool that committed us to something all the way through. That it was one stepping stone, and there were pivots in between and changes. And we needed freedom to figure things out over time. And so many, it's standard now. Pretty much every hardware startup starts through some sort of crowdfunding campaign. And it seems like such a great tool, but it can also be this sort of ball and chain around your neck. And But yeah, so that's sort of a summary of our journey, and I'm happy to take some questions.
Questions for Karl?
How do you find a manufacturing partner or vendor?
So there's, first of all, if you're hiring expertise, you're also hiring people that probably have past relationships. So that's always a good thing. And you're hiring people that maybe they don't have an existing relationship, but they know people that they can talk to. And so, so that's because there are so many different factories, contract manufacturers, which will bid for a job, and you don't know what you're getting yourself into. So it's very much a credibility, reference-based, warm introduction type of setup. So if you're going cold and you're just going based on things they're telling you, I'd say that's super risky.
Other questions? Karl, I have a question.
Yep.
Forgive me, I'm still formulating it in my head. I think the reason that people put their money out when you had the crowdfunding campaign is they were so in love with this idea that you could have something on your wrist that authenticates you from morning to night, because passwords, keys, all of these things are a pain in the butt, both physical and
Yep.
online. So I think it's smart that you're going after these enterprises now, because there's so many pieces that have to go into place before that
Yep.
can happen. But do you think that eventually you'll get back to that dream, just the same way that you gave the example of PCs? It was enterprises that pioneered the software for it, and then now consumers are demanding, like, they bring their own laptops to work and things like that. Do you think you'll get back to that?
Yeah, absolutely, and I think that's kind of exactly the point, which is it's not so much that we felt we picked the wrong market, is that we felt we picked the wrong first go-to-market market. And so, we're thinking, 1-2 years in terms of what makes the business viable. But the original concept of what the opportunity is to make authentication something that you don't think about, we do believe it has strong opportunity in the consumer space. What are the things that have to line up to make that viable? There's a lot of things. A big one that we think about is, well, are people going to wear a dedicated wristband that we make? We think unlikely. So, the OEMing the technology into third-party wearables is a big part of our long-term strategy. So it's the opportunity we feel is still there. We're just realizing that many, many more things have to line up to capture that.
Great. Any more questions for Karl?
I was wondering, it seems like it's a very different skill set that you had earlier in your career to what you're doing now, maybe like running this company. I was wondering, is there overlap, or do you feel like you're having to learn a whole new set of skills in order to manage what you're doing?
So I think absolutely, I'm constantly having to learn new stuff, and I think for even people that have done it before, and we're based in Toronto, and it's a pretty healthy startup ecosystem, multi-time founders, and the thing you hear is that there's not much of a playbook, right? And it's different every single time. The beauty of doing it before is at least knowing what you're in for. But not the specifics. And so, there's always this buy or build type of question, meaning build, do you learn it yourself, or do you buy, do you hire? And we're always balancing those things because you have limited capital. And so I've invested in a really strong executive team where I did bring in senior talent. I can say there's a mental thing when you're doing a startup is you do the things you know, and so if you're kind of a first-time founder, you'll probably go around hiring sort of more new grads. You're like, they're super smart, they'll figure it out. That's great, but that's usually only part of the equation. People that have done it and know how to put some structure around it so that you can actually deliver a quality product. So I find is that mixture and that self-awareness that you need to do that. And for me, so I actually was a CEO until about 6 months ago. As we shifted to enterprise, realized I could learn sort of enterprise IT security space over the next 2 years, or like we'd go to market the next 6 months. And so ultimately hired in a CEO, and it's just like enhancing that team so we can go to market.